everyone, happy Saturday and welcome back. We are joined by the People's Party of Canada leader Maxime Bernier today. We discuss Donald Trump, Mark Carney, Pierre Poilievre, vote splitting, and of course, Alberta independence. I asked the PPC leader what he thinks about ongoing efforts in this province to hold a referendum on Alberta separation. You might be surprised what he had to say. Stay tuned to find out. I'm Rachel. Welcome back to Rachel Parker. So I want to start by asking you some of the big news that has dropped over the weekend, the situation with U.S. President Donald Trump and Mark Carney. Now, you might remember that a little while ago, Donald Trump had actually kind of slighted Pierre Poilievre. Some people took it as an endorsement of Mark Carney. Some people said, oh, he's clearly being critical of Pierre Poilievre because Pierre Poilievre hasn't kissed the ring, so to speak. At that time, I thought, oh, maybe Donald Trump is actually trying to help Mr. Poilievre by showing a preference for Mark Carney. Maybe what he thought that would help the situation in Canada. But now, due to this new phone call that has come out, I'm not entirely sure what's going on. I'm sure you saw the news that Donald Trump had a phone call with Mark Carney. He said the conversation was very productive. He said that they're working on things that will benefit both countries, and he essentially said he would be speaking with Mark Carney shortly after the election, which one would take to mean that he expects Mark Carney to win the election next month. What is your read on this? Would Donald Trump, does he actually appear to seem like he would prefer to work with Mark Carney?
Yes, thank you for asking. First, I must say that it's a very good news that now President Trump said, I'm ready to work with Canada and not the 51st state. I've read his book, The Art of a Deal, and that was what he did to us last couple of weeks, was try to, engage us and just pushing us a little bit. And he did that by calling Trudeau, a governor, saying that we are a 51st state. He didn't like Justin Trudeau for sure. So now, he tried to bully us a little bit. But now, the reality is we need to have a deal together, the U.S. and us. And President Trump understands that. I think so. So is he, when he said, after the election, I don't know if he wants to work with a liberal or a conservative. The most important is ready to work with Canadians. And that's the most important for me. And let's have a deal. What I didn't like, what Carney said after that phone call, he said that, we will have a discussion, but supply management is not on the table. That must be on the table because it will be good for Canadian consumers and it will be good also for the U.S. And we know that President Trump was asking for the abolition of that system in 2018 at our first negotiation and recently. So that being said, I don't know with whom President Trump wants to work with, but anyway, he's ready to work with us. We just need to stop that trade war. I hope that Carney won't impose more tariffs on us, Canadians, because we are the ones who are paying for that. And Poilievre said that he's ready to have counter tariffs, dollar for dollar. That will that will start a recession here in Canada. So we need to stop that. We cannot win a trade war. The U.S. are 10 times bigger than us. So the good news is Trump wants to have a new deal with Canada as soon as possible and not waiting until 2026. So let's do it by putting everything on the table. That's the only way to have a good deal with the U.S.
On Friday, Global News released an article with some unnamed conservative strategists criticizing the Conservative Party of Canada's campaign strategy and said, they really need to tighten things up. And also they need to understand that the ballot question isn't one of the economy and taxes, but rather the ballot question for this election cycle is Donald Trump. Do you agree with that assessment?
I don't agree with that. The ballot question must be having a better country for us, for Canadians. And yes, the fact that President Trump wants to have a new deal, that's a big challenge for us. So, and also add to that that our economy is not ready with, huge taxes that we are imposing on businesses. We don't have a free trade agreement inside our own country. I said that, we must be sure to have a tax reform. We must try to have a free trade agreement in Canada. And also, we must lower taxes to individuals and also businesses. And actually, the big challenge that we have as a country, for me, Trump is part of that, but the biggest problem is mass immigration. As you know, President Trump is saying a stop to immigration and illegal immigration in the U.S. He is deporting these illegals, and we must do the same because that is having a huge impact on us for our security and on the US also. So when Mark Carney said we had a discussion about the security of our borders, our defense, I agree with that. But the first thing to do is to stop that mass immigration. And we are the only national political party that is saying we need to have a moratorium on immigration. We need to have a pause on immigration for a couple of years. We need to be sure to reinvest in our own security at the borders and also our own defense. So that's what is important. These negotiations, but at the same time, being sure that this country will be safer for Canadians and also for the American if we are tough on and doing what we need to do on our borders.
I want to turn our attention to the People's Party of Canada for a little bit. I was doing some research. 337 Canada has, projected your national vote at somewhere between 1.8 and 2%. That's down from the 4.9% of the national vote you received back in 2021 when I personally attended a number of PPC rallies in Southern Ontario that were very well attended. And a big part of that was that you were sort of hailed as the only federal leader who was willing to speak out against the COVID restrictions. Now, without COVID being a question in this election, how does the PPC make inroads in the federal election this year?
What do we want to do? Actually, we will do our best to be able to participate in the national debates. We have up to now about 315 candidates all across the country. We'll have more before the end of next week. And also, the sad thing is these polling corporations are not asking about the PPC. So we really don't know when they're saying, about 2 or 1.9 or 2%. We don't know. We didn't have a big, credible polling corporation like, for example, Léger, and they didn't put our name there. They put others. So it's very difficult to know where we are. But I can tell you that, yes, we had 5%. And yes, that was because of our position on COVID during the last election. We were fighting for freedom of choice. But I believe that this election, more people understand that, it will be about immigration and the impact on immigration on our life, on our standard of living. Our standard of living is going down. Our purchasing power is going down. We have more people who are coming to our country. The GDP is growing, but the GDP per capita is declining because, we have all these people are coming very fast to our country, and the GDP or the economy cannot grow as fast as the people that we are that the new immigrants that we are having. So what I'm telling you is the economic pie is growing, but our piece of the pie is going down and it's smaller than it was. So immigration has an impact on everything, and not only housing, but also the social fabric of our country. So my goal for this election is, immigration and the economy must be the question ballot. And COVID-19 for us was the question ballot. Canadians who were saying enough is enough with these mandates and stay-at-home orders and vaccine passport, they decided to vote for the People's Party. So I think that we can double our score from 5 to 10. I hope. I'm traveling across the country. I can tell you that I feel that there's a momentum. I was, with Patrick Bet David. I was with Alex Jean, and the timing was good. with us just one day before the election, the Sunday when Carney did called the election. So the timing was good, and people are seeing us on social media. But the problem is the mainstream media is not giving us any coverage, and they have the opportunity to do that because every day we are doing a press conference at 1 p.m. Eastern speaking about our platform, and they have the opportunity to cover us. I hope it will change, and we'll know next week what will be the decision of the leaders debate commissions if we are in or out. But what I don't like is, they are coming with new criteria every elections. If you follow the criteria that they said in 2021, at that time it was having 4% of the vote at the previous election. We didn't have that in 2021, but this year, we had 5% at the previous elections. But because we were okay to participate in the national debates, they changed the rules, so it will be more difficult. But I know that's why I'm with you tonight, and I appreciate these questions because more and more people are listening with podcaster like you, their news on social media, and the mainstream media is dying in the state and here in Canada. So the future is with you. And I'm the only national politician that is doing, podcasts, YouTubers during this campaign and after. Because if you want to have a 1 hour discussion, you need to have, a strong platform. And for the conservative and the liberals, they're doing politics, like we did a couple of years ago. We don't know what is the electoral platform of Pierre Poilievre. If you go on their website, he said, like the liberals at the last this week, that they will cut our taxes by $14 billion for the conservative. But all that will be done with a bigger deficit. So we know that the deficits of today are the taxes of tomorrow and the inflation of tomorrow. We need to be serious about that, balancing the budget first, and after that, lowering taxes to everybody. So answering your questions, I believe that with that common sense platform and the fact that I'm traveling across the country, I think that will do better than what the polls are telling us today.
I want to get your response to a criticism that I often see levied against you online, which is that you primarily live or spend a lot of time in Florida. In August 2024, the Counter Signal reported that you had purchased a property down in Florida. So I'm wondering what your response is to this. Do you own property in Florida, and where do you spend most of your time?
That was all lie. As you know, they were paid by the Conservative Party of Canada. The Conservative Party of Canada doesn't want us to exist because we are the only real conservative party in this country. So they did that to discredit me in 2019 with Kinsella, and that was all public. The Global Mail said that the Conservative did pay $165,000 to discredit the People's Party. And now, you have that fake journalist who is saying that I own a villa in Florida. First of all, I don't have personally a villa in Florida. And my wife didn't buy a villa in Florida. I own, a cottage in Quebec on a lake, and my wife owned a little house in Florida. And when she decided to buy that, that was after an hurricane, and she bought actually 4 walls and a roof because they had 8 feet of water in that house, and we need to redo the house. And my wife is doing that right now. So I'm not in Florida. She bought that for an investment. And, I was there only maybe I did 2 weeks during Christmas with my daughters. And so I'm here in Canada. I'm building this party. I live in Montreal. And, right now I'm very pleased and proud to say that we have a lot of candidates, almost a full slate. And it's a lot of work to do that. I'm on social media. I'm traveling before, during, and after the election all across the country to find candidates, to build the organization. And so I'm busy. I'm working hard. But that fake journalist just wanted to discredit us. And for me, that's the Conservative Party. They're afraid of us. because, they cannot have an argument. They don't want to speak about our platform because they know that 25% of their supporters love what we are saying, but some of them are not voting for us because their first priority is to get rid of the liberals. But I told them, if you want real changes and bold reforms in this country, you need to vote for what you believe. You'll have more chances to have what you want. And look at Polyev. Polyev right now is splitting the liberal votes. That's his job. We don't split any vote. We are out there speaking about, real conservative free market values based on facts and reason. And, I'm okay with that. When you're in politics, when your opponent are throwing rock at you or calling you names, that's because they cannot have a discussion or they don't want to have a discussion. They know that they won't win the argument.
Okay, everyone, and before we continue, some of you have been asking how you can support my work, support my independent journalism. You can do that over on Patreon. I finally got this account up and running. We have it linked here in the video, and it will also be linked in the description box. So if you would like to, if you are able to, head on over to my Patreon, and you can pick one of the membership options. The first is just sort of a monthly membership if you want to support my journalism. I think it's for like $5. There's another option if you would like to have me answer a question. We will be doing those at the end of every month. And then finally, the last option is if you would like to join a monthly Zoom call with me to ask a question or leave a comment. I have capped that at, I believe, about 20 people just because I want to give everyone an opportunity to get their comments in. So you definitely want to register for that before we run out of spaces, and we will be hosting our first Zoom call next month. Okay, thanks. Back to business. I want to turn our attention to Western alienation. As you know, I am based in Alberta. My audience is actually about 50% US and 50% Canadian. And of that Canadian portion, a significant people are tuning in from Alberta, as I have been closely following the Alberta independence movement, which I believe we are seeing a pretty strong resurgence in. I commissioned some polling, which said there's about 37% interest in an independent Alberta in the province right now. Now, that is without a sustained education campaign on the benefits of independence. I know that the PPC has said that they would significantly amend the equalization formula, which is one of Albertans' many complaints about Alberta's deal in Confederation. Estimates of the Canadian Taxpayers Federation say Alberta's paying in about $3 billion annually, and we haven't received an equalization payment in six decades. Now, assuming we do not see a PPC government elected on April 28th, we know that Mark Carney is not going to adjust those equalization formulas. It seems unlikely that Pierre Poilievre would either. Would you support Albertans' efforts to hold a referendum on independence?
I like the question. First, before answering that question, you're right. Poilievre is taking Albertans' vote for granted. He won't speak about the equalization formula because he's pandering to Quebec and Eastern Canada. He doesn't have, the courage to tell you the truth that he won't do anything by not speaking about that. It's not part of his platform. So I'm telling Albertans, if you're fed up with that, why are you voting for Poilievre all the time? And the Conservative. Our position on that, actually, I did an announcement that was yesterday about the equalization here in Quebec. As you know, the equalization payments are last year $26 billion. That's the money that's coming from rich provinces to poor provinces. And as you know, my own province in Quebec is under that formula, a poor province. And we know in Quebec that we are not that poor, but Quebec received equalization for the last, since 1957. Quebec is a poor province since 1957. That's not true. We need to change that. That formula is unfair because all the incomes going to the federal government under, hydroelectricity, it is not part of the formula. But all the tax incomes that the federal government received from the industry, oil and gas, it is part of the formula. So that's why Quebec is a poor province. So answering your questions, what we want to do, we want to cut by half the equalization payments. Instead of $26 billion, that will be $13 billion. So instead of Quebec last year, they received half of that money, $13 billion. We need to cut that in half. So that will be $6.5 billion. So yes, we are serious. We will cut the equalization payment by half because it's the right thing to do. Right thing to do on two fronts. First, on the economy, because that will give the right incentive for Quebec and New Brunswick to develop also their own natural resources. In Quebec, we have shale gas, but there's a moratorium on the exploitation of shale gas. So the Quebec government will be in a position to have more free market policies, and that will bring more prosperity in Quebec. So let's give them that incentive. And also for the other reason, the unity of this country. You're right about that. The separatist movement in Alberta is alive, and the separatist movement in Quebec also. Just for your information, the PQ, the independentists, the separatists in Quebec are ahead in the polls right now. And the provincial election in Quebec will be in 2026. And the young, charismatic leader of the PQ is very honest, is saying if you vote for the PQ, that's a vote for a referendum. And he said we'll have that referendum a year after my election. So we may have a referendum in Quebec in 2027. That being said, for me personally and the People's Party, our platform is very clear. We want a radical decentralization at the federal level. We will respect our constitution. We'll respect the autonomy of provinces. In Alberta, you'll be able to have your own pension fund, your own police. You will be able to manage your own health care because we'll abolish the Canadian Health Care Act. You'll be able also to develop your own natural resources without any interference by the federal government. More autonomy for Alberta, more autonomy for every province. I just want to let you know that we had the referendum in 1995 in Quebec. And me, as a Quebecer, I voted yes at that time. I voted yes. Why? Because I wanted the federal government to respect provincial jurisdictions. Did not happen. I decided to run at the federal level to do that. Harper did nothing. Actually, he increased the equalization payments to try to have more votes in Quebec. And so Harper was a good manager of a big fat government. And that's why I'm in politics at the federal level. I want the federal government to respect the Constitution. And if we don't do that, this country, is going down the drain. We are the last hope for this country. And speaking about a referendum in Alberta, I'm welcoming that. You need to have a referendum to be serious because right now, Ottawa doesn't care about you. The Polyev doesn't care about you. So I hope that you can have a referendum. I hope that you will win. And after that, I can tell you that in Ottawa, they will do the changes that needs to be done to be sure that we will stay a united country. And if you have a referendum, I'll be the only and the first national politician saying, vote yes, Alberta. Vote yes, because at that time, Ottawa will take you seriously. Now, Polyev is not taking you seriously. The Liberals are not taking you seriously. I am, and I want you to be successful, and I want you to stay in this country. And this constitution is great. We have different cultures in this country: Quebec, Francophone, Alberta, and that's why the fathers of our constitution decided to have a constitution that is giving more powers to provinces, more autonomy to provinces. But now with Ottawa, with the climate change policy, the net zero in 2050, that Polyev is okay with that, and Carney, we are not. You'll be able to do. Us, we are saying you and all Canadians, no more Paris Accord, no more, regulations or tax to fight climate change, contrary to Polyev and Carney. So we will say the same thing. That platform is the best one to unite this country. And if, that platform is not enforced or is not implemented today, I don't see a great future for this country, really.
Now, you've said that you would support Albertans voting yes in an independence referendum, essentially because it would give them a real bargaining chip to go to the federal government and say, meet our demands because we have a mandate for independence otherwise. There are some people in the independence movement who say that is what they want. They want a independence referendum so that they have leverage. And there are others who say, I'm not interested in leverage. It's too late, and I would like to leave Canada. Alberta is ready to leave Canada. Would you still support that independence referendum if its ultimate objective was succession from Canada?
No, I want you guys part of this country. And I'm telling you strategically what you must do to be respected in Ottawa. I'm respecting you. I like this country. I want you part of this country. And because, the conservative and all these establishment political parties, Polyev is not speaking about the equalization. He's not speaking, ending the Paris Accord. He's not working for you guys. And, I think if we have a Polyev government or a Carney's government, that would be the same. So I want you to be in. Like when I voted for the independence in Quebec, I didn't want Quebec to be independent. I was sending a strong signal to Ottawa. You need to change that. And nothing happened. So if nothing happened when Quebec has, almost won that referendum, you don't have any bargaining power if you don't have a referendum. I don't know. It would be. I can tell you that we are. We want us as the only populist national political party. We want us to double our score from 5 to 10, being more influential. That will be the best for the country. And maybe at this election we may have a couple of candidates elected, and I hope I'm working hard for that. I can tell you that I won't be the prime minister after that election, but the People's Party is there for the long term. That's very hard for a new political party to win seats in a parliamentary system, first past the post. But look, in England, in UK, you have Nigel Farage with the Reform Party, a party that he created a year before the national election. He was able to have 15% of the vote, and with that, he was able to elect six candidates. But today, couple of 1 year after the election, in a poll, if there's a general election, he will be prime minister. So everything can happen. It's a little bit more difficult in a parliamentary system, and I think that will be able to grow. Who will be in government? The Liberals or the Conservative, a majority or a minority government? I don't know. But some people are telling me, oh, Maxime, you split the vote, you are helping Trudeau. No, I'm not splitting any vote. Polyev is splitting the Liberal votes, is going to the left to be sure to have more support in big cities like Montreal, Toronto, and Vancouver. I'm not doing that, and don't blame me if Polyev is a weak leader.
The reason that I asked sort of what you think about the outcome of the federal election is because you've expressed in this interview that Canada's in bad shape and that without, the PPC, you think it's going to continue trending in the wrong direction. I know my audience is very concerned about the future of Canada, as am I. It's something we talk about frequently on this show. And I have to say, if we see a Liberal government, which is a very real possibility, elected on April 28th, I think it'll be very difficult for Pierre Poilievre to hold on to the Conservative leadership. And it's very difficult to have a Conservative coalition in this country. Pierre Poilievre, it was seen remarkable when he won the Conservative leadership contest. And already we're seeing, his ability to hold on to that Conservative coalition. It's beginning to slip now. And I wonder if we're really going to be able to see another leader who is going to be able to do that because it is such a precarious thing to do. And something that I hear a lot in Alberta is maybe it's time to sort of end this notion of having a big Conservative coalition and rather have a coalition government in which maybe the Conservatives don't run candidates, the federal Conservatives don't run candidates in Alberta, or maybe Albertans just stop voting for a federal Conservative party and start voting for candidates that are are much more conservative in this province. And then we have a federal conservative party that can appeal to more liberal areas like voter rich Ontario and Quebec. And, those parties together could come together to form a coalition government in parliament. Just because from my perspective, the culture in the GTA and the culture in Quebec is so radically liberal from what it is here in Alberta. And I don't know how we bridge that gap with a conservative party federally anymore. Do you think that something like that could ever work in Canada? And is that maybe a way that we could bridge that gap of just having such different cultures across the country?
It happened. You had the Reform Party with Preston Manning. Preston Manning was fighting for you guys. Actually, 90% of our platform is in line with what Preston Manning was telling you. Radical decentralization. But the problem is Preston wanted to be in government and he wanted to have support in Ontario. And so they changed the platform. Stephen Harper was supposed to be a real conservative, but when he was in government, he did huge deficit. And Jean Chrétien was more a conservative than Stephen Harper. Sorry, but that's the reality. Speaking about what is happening, I'll tell you an anecdote. My leadership contest with the Conservative Party of Canada in 2017. I didn't win with 49% of the vote. And, I tried to work with Andrew Scheer at that time, who did win with 51% of the vote. I tried to work with him for 15 months. And I wanted him, and we were, in 2018 at that time, and I wanted him to take some of my ideas that, I was campaigning on during the leadership campaign. So I had a meeting with him, a private meeting with Andrew Scheer just in the beginning of 2018. And I told him, and Andrew, I know that you are working for the electoral campaign for the election in 2029. I just want to know if you will take some of our ideas to be part of your platform. And I must admit, he was very honest and he told me, Maxime, I won't take any of your ideas. I said, why? My ideas were popular with the memberships of the Conservative Party of Canada. I had 49%. And he said, that's the reason, because your ideas are popular with the membership. But now I'm running to be prime minister. And your ideas are not popular with the general population. And that's why I left and I said, this party is morally and intellectually corrupt. They don't speak about conservative ideas. They're doing polling and focus group to know what they believe in. They don't have any conviction. And by doing that, they're giving more credibility to the leftist narrative. So for Alberta right now, we are that party. I'm telling people in Alberta, vote for the PPC. We are that party, and believe us, because what I'm saying today, I said that in 2018, 2019, 2021, and we won't change our platform. We don't do any polling and focus group because we strongly believe that we have the best ideas, the best policies for this country and, for the unity and the prosperity of this country. And our goal is to move the Overton window and having more support, being more influential. And so that's the way to win the battle of ideas. But forget the conservative. They're not doing anything for you. And ask yourself, who is giving advice to Pierre Poilievre? Stephen Harper. So that will be the same. If Poilievre is in government, yes, he will be a little bit better than the Liberals, but he won't do everything that you need in Quebec and New Brunswick and Newfoundland to be sure that this country will be united and prosperous. He won't, because he doesn't have any conviction, and he won't have a mandate to, for example, cut the equalization payments. He won't have any mandate for that. He won't do that. So Alberta will be the big loser like usual.
Maxime, thank you so much for your time today. We'll continue to follow your campaign with interest.
Thank you, Rachel. Have a nice day.
All right, everyone, that's all we have time for today. I hope you enjoyed my interview with Maxime. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. I thought it was interesting. He said he supports a referendum on Alberta independence so that Alberta has that bargaining chip to get a better deal in Confederation, to get a better deal from Ottawa, but he doesn't support Alberta independence on its own. He doesn't support a referendum on independence for the objective of actually leaving Canada, which probably is not terribly surprising for an individual who is a federal leader. Either way, let me know what you thought about his rationale in the comment section below. Be sure to take a look at some of those over the weekend. Hope that you guys enjoy the rest of your weekend. It snowed here. We got like 5 inches of snow. It's been snowing for 2 days. Pretty miserable. I'm hating it. So leave some interesting comments so that I have something to do over the weekend. Take care and God bless.